Welcome back to you, baby dolls. We have a very special episode. I am delivering you some UFO lore. I am very passionate about it. I used to think it was all BS, but there's something else going on, isn't there? Have you ever heard of the Vedic Scriptures? It is from India, written 3,000 years ago. In these scriptures, there's a lot of content, friends. This is insane. They tell stories about aliens interacting with humans. And it's not just any story. It is a vast, deep, detailed stories. There's many labels. There's different scenarios. Oh my gosh, right? It's actually crazy. They even mention the many different alien species, including those lizard people, reptilians. They mention different types of alien species. They mention insects as a species. Some might call them bug eaters or manta ray looking type of head dudes. There's also giant ants. When I heard this, I was like, there's no way this is true. I'm like, wait a minute. How did they know this 3,000 years ago? You're telling me it's just a coincidence? By the way, every world culture, every world religion has stories of us interacting with aliens. Every single one. Different stories, different cultures, different languages all around the world. There's also a common theme. There's also a time in our human history where there was a giant cataclysm, where there was like an end of world scenario and we get rescued and there was some sort of giant flood. You know, the Bible refers to it maybe as Moses with the sea, but there's just always these stories of the flood. If you watch some Graham Hancock and some of those other dudes that have appeared on Joe Rogan and also the Concrete channel, you've seen these geological researching dudes, and they always speak about our past and how we don't understand anything. And the more I used to think about it, I used to think, wait a minute, that wasn't what I learned in school. Well, aren't you surprised? I bet you're not. So how did these ancient texts talk about reptilians and different bug eater people and giant bugs, UFO craft? It gets deeper. We're just getting started, right? We are just getting started. We're here to crank it. Don't worry. We're going to make it, friends. But there's some weird stuff going on. You know these 3,000-year-old scriptures from India? They speak of UFO craft and beings with helmets on who control them. You know, there are a lot of UFO abductee stories where the beings are wearing helmets. There's many stories, friends. I'm not joking. There's America, Argentina, Chile, all around the world. Some dude's just in a field, maybe like farming away on his tractor, and then just an egg comes from the sky and just lands in the middle of the field. And then an alien dude just walks out and they got like a weird like helmet and they just walk back up and they disappear. So many of these stories, friends. So many of these stories. Look, they draw so many drawings. Look, they just come out. They come out and chill with them. Right? These stories, it's not like one. I mean, here's another dude who saw one. Right? Look at this. Hey. Look at this dude just chilling out. Woohoo! Look at you. Look at this, just comes in between the trees. Look, you're not hiding anybody. You're not hiding there, Mr. UFO. Like, come on, man. 3,000 years old, plus these. I mean, look, you got these. Huge saucer. Right. Look, I know, friends, I'm very, obviously, you have to be skeptical of the government because you just know they're just there to control, manipulate people. But when you've got 3,000-year-old texts with multiple languages, multiple countries all around the world, and you've even got 1950s clippings from the newspaper here about sources and stuff. Like, come on, man. Like, it's pretty obvious things are going on. Oh, golly gee, man. Golly gee. Everyone's just imagining stuff. Wow. I can't seem to figure it out, friends. I mean, there's heaps. This is where the kids drew. Right? It's always like it's just an egg comes out. Hey, I'm going out of here. See yous. Not a coincidence. Something's going on. All right. Something's going on. Now, it goes deeper. There's a lot of theories. We don't know. We'll never know. Most likely, what's happening is you and I we are in a very long process of evolution, and our brains are getting ever so slightly more salted as a peanut, and it just takes so long that we don't notice a change. But maybe fast forward 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 years from now, maybe us as humans, we've evolved to think of multiple dimensions, non-human intelligence. Maybe we kind of figure out how the universe really works, what actually is gravity, all these questions we don't know yet. I mean, it's pretty obvious we're going that way. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out, right? But right now, there's all these question marks. And that's what makes it kind of amazing, that we don't actually know. Right? So you have these scriptures, and this is wild. They actually classify aliens under 3 categories. All right, now, this is another thing. In the UFO lore, this is one thing when I like was researching, I watch all these videos and I'm like, wait, there's good guys and there's bad guys? And you hear some people and you're like, man, how do you know what they're named, firstly? Secondly, how do you even know they're bad? So you just ask these normal questions. So that's why I was shocked when I came across these ancient scriptures who say the same thing. They're like, yeah, there's benevolent beings, kind beings. There are what they use their own words for mortal human beings. Okay, now there's not too much description on that, but it could just be like, this also correlates to a lot of stories. People say there are just ones who walk among us. We just got no idea. They just blend in too well, right? And it's not far-fetched to think of that, because we send the monkey into a jungle to study what they're doing. We've been able to do it with bees and plants and just different stuff. So who's to say they're not doing it on us? It's pretty obvious, right? So if we could be the zookeeper, they're probably the zookeeper for us, and we're inside the zoo. Now, this is where it gets a bit weird. There's benevolent beings. Now, why I say weird is something doesn't add up. Like, look, okay. When they talk about malevolent or bad beings, I've heard stories where some of them are just out to get us. I'm like, okay, you've got the technology to travel multidimensional, to vaporize anything. If they really want to kill humans, why are we still around? All right. Are we being protected? How come we didn't see them fighting? What's going on? You know what I mean? Maybe we just are in a zoo. There's also people who speak about, but like, this is when I say people, I'm not talking about some lunatic. I'm talking about like CIA people on their deathbed, like 80 years old, who have been like really deep inside. Those types of people, like, yeah, I've got about 3 weeks to live, and I'm going to tell you what happened. You know, that type of stuff. They've mentioned where there are beings out there, they're very neutral, but they don't have empathy like you and I. They just don't care. Like, they don't really care for humans. And you're trying to think, what does that mean? I guess it could mean, I don't know. You know how sometimes maybe if you wanted to do a test on an animal, you got to make sure there's no pain? Well, maybe they just don't care with us if they want to test something. They just shove something up your nose, shove something in your wee hole, and then give you the memory eraser when you're done, and that's it. That actually seems to be a common thing too, this memory erasing thing. And if you watch the movie Men in Black, I actually haven't watched the movie Men in Black, friends. That's why I flipped out that I know what this silver rod-looking thing in the movie does, wipes your memory. As I'm reading these stories, I was like, that's so strange. This memory wiping thing was happening a long time ago, and they put it in the movies. That's why, friends, you know, we're in crypto now. We're in cryptocurrency land. We know what's going on, all right? We know that it's not just all random pieces of the puzzle. We know there's psyops, government manipulation, and grooming. We know all that, okay? So it's also been widely known that they will groom humans, us, in terms of introducing an idea so we don't get too scared, you know? So we're kind of like used to this whole memory erasing thing as like a science fiction stuff. That's why, I mean, I'm even talking about it to you. It's kind of amazing, right? So if it was to come out that they found out a way to like erase your memory for the past 12 hours with some technology or chemical, or aliens are kind of doing it to so you don't remember any pain or get PTSD, you know? Yeah, of course it would be mind-blowing, but it wouldn't be as mind-blowing or as much of an ontological shock as if, you know, now we've been exposed to a lot of this science fiction stuff. This is a text from the Vedic Scriptures, right? Look what it says. They literally says, those wonderful Vimana aircrafts roamed the sky with extremely high speed, controlled by thousands of evil creatures with big round eyes with helmets on their head. You know, you read this and you're like, oh, golly gee, which nutcase wrote that? How about if I told you this nutcase lived 3,000 years ago? I don't know. Maybe he's making it up. Right. Firstly, how the hell do they even know what a helmet is? Big round eyes. All right. They're controlled by thousands of evil creatures. You know, it could be telepathic. That's a lot of how these hives work. You know, a lot of these concepts, I'm not a science fiction enthusiast or anything, but the more I dug into this UFO stuff, I realized all the science fiction movies and books out there and games, they were just deriving stuff from real world happenings. That was kind of a flip out to me. Look at these drawings on the floor, by the way. Look at these. All right. This is crazy, yeah? So, you know, in this book, the Vedic Textures, they say the lowest life form in like basically the universe of all beings is beings who depend on water when they breathe. They call them jalajas. So it just means aquatic and amphibians. It's their equivalent. So here I am joking. It's not looking good for frogs out there. You know, that's wild, right? So you have these beings, have helmets being drawn, ancient texts, ancient pictures. Oh, look, obviously something's going on. Are we a genetic experiment? That's what we don't know. That's why there's a lot of fear out there. But not really. I mean, can you control anything? No. Are we a genetic experiment? Are we all just part of the simulation, it's part of a game? Is it a bit of both? Is anybody out to hurt us? How do they hurt us? That's another thing, right? You know, there's a lot of theories, friends, where how we are kind of influenced is the ancient biblical texts of like, they call like, you know, the evil dark force. It's very interesting when you think about it. But I saw somebody on Reddit, they made a very, very good comment. They said, yeah, it's kind of funny how if we just found out that it was true, there is some sort of like a shaitan or a Satan and a evil dark force that was working in the background to counter light. It'll be funny how humans interpret it, because every time we did something bad, we would just always blame it on the evil dark force and would never take responsibility. So there's obviously something more complex going on that we can't truly grasp. I mean, just our peanut brains are just too peanutty, not enough salt in there. Right? This is where it gets kind of fun, right? The Vedic textures, right? They speak of a species of intelligent life called the Ruru species. And they said they're part of the family of insects and arachnids. So they're literally bugs. They're like, hey, there's an intelligent life out there. They're bugs. I'm telling you, friends. I'm telling you, the bug eaters. I hope they pump out crypto bags. Look what they say as well. They mention the Ruru. These don't exist on Earth, but they are more ferocious than a snake. What do you think? Now, what about the lizard people? All right, because I've been hearing about lizard people, and I'm like, no way. This has got to be the fake one, right? I don't know, friends. We've seen some stuff. Lizard people. So these 3,000-year-old ancient texts, they actually have a word for the lizard and reptilian people. They call them Rudranas, the reptilian species. And they also said these guys are bad dudes. They are malevolent to other living entities. Interesting. Why reptiles? So when we see crocodiles and alligators and other reptiles, we can't tell where they're moving or where their heads are. So as humans, we automatically think we shouldn't trust it. But it's also strange that the reptilians just so happen, not only that they look untrustworthy, apparently they're bad entities. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or it comes with a package. You know, there's also greater detail in these texts. They mention that there's 2 reptilian clans. One of them called the Nagas, the other one's called the Uragas. Right? So look, man, here's the thing. Okay, you read one story and you're like, oh, golly gee, look at your imagination. What were you smoking back then? But then you read 80 stories, many languages all around the world, had no connection with each other. See the drawings. Then you speak about the indigenous culture still around, and they have hand-me-down stories from thousands of years ago, and they have different words from these. They have different knowledge. You know, they found African tribes. There is an African tribe in America, in Africa, where they knew the solar star systems before Western civilization or anybody else in the world. And their story literally says, I've got the name of this African tribe. Their story is literally, our alien creator dudes came down from space in like this ship, egg thing, and they just taught us all this language. And they told us how the planets are. They told us what the solar system looks like. And they knew it. They knew that the Earth is not the center of the universe, etc. They were behind, but before everybody. They had all the knowledge. And they worship him. So they're actually serious about it. So to us, it's like, oh, that's weird. No, to them, it's like full gospel. So it's crazy, isn't it? You know, in this text, right, they have a story here. Talks about reptilian Naga species abducting humans for sustenance. Now, I don't know if you friends have played any video games, Diablo, adventure games. There's just heaps of video games out there being really popular. There's always a common mythical creature of a serpent type of tail and like a snake body, right? And there's even Naga species of different, bosses and enemies out there when you find these dungeons. And I never thought twice when I'm playing these games. I'm like, who the hell thought of this thing? Half human, half cobra. So these are the things put in there. You know, a lot of people say, well, it's up to everyone's imagination. The way I see it, man, if there's one story, okay. But if you just say, okay, there's 80 stories, maybe 3% of them are real. Well, guess what? That's still more than one. You know what I mean? That's enough. That really is enough. That's enough for you to, like, your brain to go, oh, wow, okay, we have been lied to our whole lives. 3,000 years ago, they're talking about UFOs, spaceships, helmets, reptilian people, the lizards. And something I thought about after just doing so much research into this, and I just watch, I chill out, look at all these interviews, and I just sometimes think, I'm like, you know what? Why don't they ever think of unicorns? Why don't they ever think of giant squirrels? Why is every culture around the world saying, all right, giant round eyes, grey haired, come in a ship. There's also the reptilian dudes here and there. They're pretty bad. That's weird. Why there's no evil squirrels? What happened to the squirrels? Something to think about. Are we predisposed to thinking of these? Some mid-curver will say something like, oh, well, golly gee, because, we don't think alligators and snakes look good, so our imaginations run wild when it comes to that. I don't believe that BS. Every time that someone's got an excuse for that, it's always like carefully crafted, right? I want to know what you think. Looking at all these texts, when I find these texts, I'm always fascinated by the level of detail. Rajesh, Nagas were or are not bad. They give us yoga. The great Naga see, so Patanjali Maharishi gave this dude 8 limbs. They're just one part of his. Okay, studying it is a must for all spiritual seekers. So it is tied to the religion, but it makes you see them in a different light. You're like, okay, I get the religion part. All right, I can put that aside. But there's so much hardcore real sightings that are right next to it. Majito says, now I've heard this before. This is cool, right? Rumor has it that these feed off the fear of humans. So I think why people say this is, I think it doesn't take a genius to figure out. It's like, wait a minute, how come there's a war? How come everyone just starts fighting out of nowhere? It's like someone's just shaking the bottle. Yeah. And I've also heard there's what rumors, friends, they say, apparently, right, this is what they believe. We all got a soul, right? When we die, it floats somewhere and maybe it does a loop and then we come back to Earth. Now, NASA scientists, UFO leaks, a lot of the CIA stuff, a lot of the biological things, just I've seen this super, super, super common. And I can't help but think they figured something out. They're just too scared to tell people. I've thought, what's so scary about telling people that happens? And I realized, okay, 1% of the world's legit psychopaths. Do you really want to tell them that when you die, it ain't really over? You're going to come back? I don't know. It's things like that we maybe can't figure out. How would the law system change? Because they're like, wait a minute, you ended their life now, but they got another life. How can you prove they didn't get a better life than what they had to? You know what I mean? It changes society in a heartbeat. You can't. You really can't. Obviously, you can, but you open up a can of worms. So Mr. Megiddo continues. They absorb people's fear energy. Okay, so I've heard fear energy. Some people say souls. You never really know. Is the government ever going to tell you? Probably not. Why would they tell you? Just a third of the population easily flip out. It's no coincidence that much of our culture generates fear in the mass population. We've got media, we've got wars, not a coincidence. David Icke was right. I almost wrote him off as a nutter over his reptilian views, but now it seems that even the truth is being uncovered. When it comes to people like this, I always had a feeling, friends, I'll swear, I was always thinking, I go, man, firstly, how are they so convicted? And two, how does it all come together? And I realized something. I realized we are in crypto land. When you go speak to people outside the bubble, you look like a freak. We look like absolute freaks. It's literally imaginary internet Ponzi money. It's based off people's imagination. There's no government with guns to back it. You just blind faith. And when I see people react to crypto, and then I don't even bother explaining, I look at it from their perspective. I'm like, oh, wow, we really are nutcases. But how do we adopt people? It's because we're like, wait a minute, we structure sentences together. We're actually just normal people. And then the bridge gets made. And I always wondered with the lizard people, is that ever going to happen? Is it going to get closer and closer? I think it's not a coincidence you have all these texts and all these story out there. I really don't think that. But I also don't think it's a coincidence we still haven't seen anything, because everyone's like, just show us a picture. Just show us one video. You never know, man. Maybe they're out there. We just don't believe it. Make sure you like, subscribe, belly button, all. Catch you again soon.